Today's webinar on transitioning from automatic onboard recording devices, or AOBRDs, to electronic logging devices, or ELDs. My name is Marc Malfunction. I'll be delivering today's webinar called, as I said, Transitioning from AOBRDs to ELDs. I am the Head of Safety, Compliance, and Regulatory Affairs with Fleet Complete. For those of you who do not know me, I have worked in the industry for over 25 years in different functions within industry, in government, insurance, private fleets, and now in the telematics space. I was previously a DOT inspector, an auditor, an investigator, and an administrator with the Ontario government's Carrier Sanctions and Investigations Office. I've also worked as the National Director of Safety and Training Services for the largest trucking insurer in Canada. I've also worked as the Director of Safety and Compliance for the largest waste management company in North America, as well as the largest 3PL in Canada. Today is the ELD mandate deadline. We are hosting this webinar to prepare you for this new day of logging. We are going to be sharing the differences between AOBRDs and ELDs. More importantly, why you may want to consider staying on AOBRDs and what you can expect once you transition to ELDs. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. We'll be recording today's webinar, and we'll also be posting the video onto the Fleet Complete blog. You can visit our blog at www.fleetcomplete.com/blog. You'll also find recaps here of all our previous webinars. You'll find as well information on what's happening in the industry, including new rules, regulation changes, and ELD mandate news. We, as a rule, attempt to post new content very regularly on our website. We make it our great source for industry news, and it's an easy way to keep yourselves up to date. If you have any questions during this webinar, you can enter them into the question box located on the GoToWebinar control panel. The question box is located on the lower right side of the window. At the end of the webinar, I will be answering some questions that have been sent out to me. You can also send me questions directly. My email address is marc@fleetcomplete.com. We certainly get a lot of questions during these webinars, so I apologize if I'm not able to answer them right there and then. If not, I do commit to responding back to you. Tomorrow, you will also be sent a follow-up email with a link to the recording and answers to the questions. There will also be a link to the most frequently asked questions about the ELD mandate, which is currently available on our Fleet Complete website under blogs. Feel free to share this information with anyone who may have questions about the ELD mandate. So let's get started. Our agenda will consist of, firstly, I will tell you what devices you need to make sure you are running in compliance with the ELD mandate. We'll then review the automatic onboard recording devices, or AOBRDs, the grandfathering clauses, and what does that mean to you. We'll then go on through to the benefits of using the AOBRD, and more importantly, why it would be in your best interest to keep using an AOBRD as long as you can. We'll then go over what are some of the key differences you can expect to see when you're transitioning to electronic logging devices, or ELDs. Then we'll review some necessary materials that you'll need to surrender at roadside if you're using an ELD. We will also show you where you can find these resources to ensure a smooth transition for yourselves and for your drivers. Finally, I'll tell you a little bit about Fleet Complete solutions to the ELD mandate for those of you who are still in need of a compliance solution. So let's start off by explaining what constitutes compliance. Well, the ELD mandate was announced in December 2015 and subsequently finalized the following year, be it February 2016. Today is the compliance deadline. What this means is that all non-exempt commercial motor vehicles need to have a compliance solution now. Prior to December 18th, it would be an AOBRD, and now must be an ELD. There is some misinformation floating around out there about what that means to be compliant. I just want to clarify to you that under the ELD mandate, the FMCSA specifies that you need an FMCSA registered engine connected device in order to be considered compliant. This means that an electronic logbook application alone is simply not enough. You will not be in compliance in those circumstances. For those of you using the Big Roll mobile app, the electronic logbook to track your hours of service by itself is no longer compliant. You'll need an engine connected hardware like the Complete MGS 700 or DashLink running as an AOBRD or ELD to be compliant with the mandate. There's also some confusion over what was announced by FMCSA about an April 1st, 2018 extension deadline. I want to take this opportunity to clear that up. The ELD mandate compliance deadline has not been delayed until April 1st, 2018. The FMCSA is implementing a phased-in approach to achieve full compliance. What that means is from today on to April 1st, 2018, officers will now start issuing citations against motor carriers and/or drivers for not having an ELD installed device or an AOBRD compliant device prior to the ELD deadline, which is today. Upon using discretion, it is reasonable to expect that you may be fined or your company may be fined for not having a compliant device. From what I understand, although these fines have not been published as of yet, we're hearing that they will likely be in the range of $500 or so. As you can appreciate, that's a pretty hefty fine. These are fines that will be issued at an officer's discretion. Being a former DOT inspector, I can attest to the fact that you will run into different scenarios at roadside. What this means is that if you are not running either an AOBRD compliant device or an ELD, it's possible that the officer will find other issues with your vehicle. If you haven't got such a solution in place, it's reasonable to expect that the officer is going to be looking at your vehicle much more closely than someone who is running such a device. What officers will not do, and this is what I want to stress during this transition, is they will not place drivers out of service under the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance or CVSA out of service criteria. Convictions for not having the device will not be pointed on your CSA 2010 fatigue basic scores. I do want to stress though, if your vehicle is stopped and you have other regulatory issues with your vehicle, that being you're not complying with the regulations, you've gone over your hours, you haven't taken the required rest, those will actually be pointed on your CSA scores. After April 1st, officers will continue to issue citations against drivers and or motor carriers, but they will also then have the added discretion place drivers out of service and to have convictions pointed against your CSA scores. Stay tuned from the FMCSA on more direction, and as I get such information, I will make sure it gets posted on our Fleet Complete site. So I move on now. How do you achieve compliance and avoid a hefty fine? You need to have an engine connected ELD or an AOBRD device compliant with Part 395-15 in your vehicle now. You need so in order to be fined at roadside or as a result of an audit. An AOBRD can be grandfathered if it was deployed prior to the ELD mandate. You will be given a 2-year window up until December 16th, 2019. This means that these AOBRDs can be used as a temporary compliance solution for the next 2 years. I'll explain this in further detail on the next slides. Let's now move on to what are deemed to be engine-connected options. There are a few terms for engine-connected devices. The reason for this is that there were a few iterations of this upcoming mandate before it became finalized. The one you'll hear most often is ELD. Depending on how long you've been in the industry, you've probably heard the term AOBRD as well. An electronic logging device, better known as an ELD, is a piece of hardware that is plugged into the ECM of your tractor. When plugged in, an ELD automatically records information from the engine to record the driver's hours of service and other required vehicle information. This is the most current term for engine-connected logging devices, and it is the one being mandated by FMCSA. AOBRDs, or automatic onboard recording devices, have been around since 1988. Interestingly, that's when I started my career with the MTO when I was an on-road enforcement officer. So I'm showing a little bit of my age here now. FMCSA back in the day defined an electronic logging solution, or AOBRD, under Part 395.15, and in Canada under the National Safety Code Standard 9. These devices are an electric, electronic, electromechanical, or a mechanical device that connects to a vehicle's engine to automatically record a driver's duty status. Like an ELD, an AOBRD must be integrally synchronized with specific operations of the vehicle in which it is installed. Under the ELD mandate, both devices, that being AOBRD or ELD, will enable you to run in compliance with the mandate. Under the mandate, if you had an AOBRD installed before today, it is grandfathered into the system. As I said, you are allowed to continue this AOBRD device for 2 more years up to December 16, 2019. After this date, you will need to transition to a fully compliant ELD. If you're running an AOBRD, you can transition to the ELD before that date, but I recommend you continue running it for as long as you can, and of course up until December 16, 2019. If you buy and install a device today and beyond, it must be ELD compliant. You cannot purchase or install an AOBRD anymore. So now we'll move on to using the Fleet Completes MGS device or our DashLink. The Fleet Complete MGS 700 or DashLink is both an AOBRD and an ELD. If you purchased and installed the device before today, you are running it as an AOBRD, and you can continue to do so for the next 2 years. You do not need to do anything if you want to keep running as an AOBRD. Just have your drivers keep on driving. If purchased and installed before today, you will now have the functionality to turn it on to become an ELD. You can turn on this ELD functionality anytime now and up to December 16, 2019. After that date, it will migrate automatically to an ELD. This is completely up to you. When you want to do this, it's a simple change in the Big Road web page. You do not need any new hardware, and there are no additional fees. Turning on an ELD is done on a truck-by-truck basis within your fleet. So as you can appreciate, some fleets will be mixed. Some fleets will have vehicles that are specific to AOBRD. Others will have vehicles that are specific to ELD. It depends on the timing when these actions took place. The other really important point I want to stress to you, very important, once you elect to turn on an ELD for a vehicle, it cannot be changed back to an AOBRD. So you should be ready to commit to this move to ELD because it's a one-way street and there's no turning back. If you purchase a device today or later, your device will be deemed to be an ELD, and you must follow the ELD compliance rules and their requirements. With Big Road, you've got a couple of options for how you're going to run in compliance in the next few years. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the pros and cons of the option to help you decide what is right for your fleet. More specifically, what are the AOBRD benefits? As mentioned above, we recommend you stay on AOBRD if you're already there for the next 2 years. There are 5 principal reasons why I recommend you do so. Let's start with history. AOBRDs have been around since 1988. Seems like just yesterday I started my career with the ministry, and look at that, we're almost 30 years later. Big Road, we have had our AOBRDs since 2012. We have continued to build upon it to ensure it's best on the market. Secondly, flexibility. AOBRDs offer more flexibility than ELDs, allowing you more freedom in logging and editing. With an ABORD, there are still some edits you can make on your logs. Next is visibility. With an AOBRD, there is less logging information recorded and displayed to an officer at roadside or at a way station. This allows you to have a little bit more privacy in your daily operations. Next is familiarity. Because our Big Road application has been around for so long, law enforcement officials are more familiar with the Big Road technology. What this means for you is a smoother inspection, getting you and your drivers out of the inspection station and back on the road faster with your loads delivered according to expectations. Finally, time to get comfortable with AOBRDs are generally less regulated than ELDs. This means less interference from law enforcement in your daily operations. This then translates into a smoother transition between paper logs and ELD. This 2-year transition will allow you some time to get comfortable with the engine-connected logging before you jump into straight, fully compliant ELD solution. This gives you time to renegotiate with your vendors that you're partnering with, because as we move forward, the gray area is gone. It's essentially black or white. So in the next few slides, we'll take a closer look at what AOBRDs allow you to do. More importantly, why it is in your best interest to keep using the AOBRD as long as possible. We'll now move on to log editing. A lot of you will want to know what is available to edit and what is not between an AOBRD and an ELD. With an AOBRD, there's a lot more editability than there is with an ELD. Drive time, of note, is one of those things that is actually pretty firm in both types of solutions. With an AOBRD, you cannot edit drive time unless the driving was an error. With an ELD, you cannot edit it at all. The only circumstance allowing you to edit under ELD is if you are in a co-driver relationship and the drive time actually belongs to the other driver. With an AOBRD, you can still edit your vehicle location. You can also change an event. So you can adjust your duty status from on duty to off duty, or from on duty driving to personal conveyance or yard moves. With an ELD, you cannot change anything that has been automatically recorded. From the web application, there are very few limited edits that you or an administrator will be able to make. One very, very key item is that in those occasions where edits are in fact made, they must be annotated on the log. I'm going to recommend that your drivers annotate specific instances to assist them to be clear at roadside if stopped by inspectors. This note will be displayed to the inspecting officer. I'll give you an example. You can change your status from off duty to on duty not driving with a note that explains that you logged training time incorrectly as off duty. The edit and annotation needs to be verified and approved by the driver inside the mobile app as part of the anti-harassment provisions in the rulemaking. The edit is not accepted until your driver either confirms or rejects it from the mobile app and resubmits the record of duty status accordingly. Other than those limited edits you are able to make, once an event has been recorded, it is essentially set in stone. This is a great reason to stick with the AOBRD until the transition date in 2 years from now, kind of like a stepping stone into the connected logging world while you get adjusted to the new restrictive ELD rules. Next, now we'll look at the edit history and who can see it. If you make an edit, how is that recorded and who can see it? Well, an AOBRD will record who made the edit and when, but will not readily display the edit history. Detailed history is also not displayed during a roadside inspection. With an ELD, on the other hand, it does record the same information and more, and that information will be displayed to the officers during the inspection. As you can appreciate, this makes it far easier for an inspector to verify whether or not the entries are in fact accurate or false. I'll show you an example of what each of these logs would look like to a DOT officer. Now let's look at inspections. I'd like to begin by saying that not only do AOBRDs offer more editability than ELDs, they also display less information at roadside. This means that the DOT officer won't be able to see as much of what you or your drivers are doing during the day when using an AOBRD. Something you'll also want to consider when making your choice is that the officers are very comfortable with AOBRDs and more particularly with the Big Road solution, the way it's displayed, the way the data is shown. You've got to appreciate this technology has been there since 1988. That being said, inspectors are largely unfamiliar with ELDs, so they won't be as rehearsed during these inspections, which means it may take more time. They may be asking your drivers more questions. They may be questioning the review of the log entries. I anticipate inspections will take longer with an ELD, so it may delay your drivers. So I just want you to be up to speed with that. Drivers who use the Fleet Complete MGS 700 or the Big Road Dash Link report smoother inspections when enforcement officers see that they used the Fleet Complete powered Big Road solution. Inspectors even comment how much they love the Big Road application because it's so easy for them to use it and interpret it. Next, we'll move on to a couple of options you have in both scenarios, AOBRD and ELD, specifically personal conveyance. How do personal conveyance and yard moves differ? Well, have you heard of these terms before? Let me explain them to you. Personal conveyance is when a driver uses a commercial motor vehicle when they are unladen without cargo. They use it for personal reasons when a driver is relieved of all responsibility for performing work on behalf of a motor carrier. It is dealt with similarly in both AOBRDs and ELDs. Drivers are considered to be off-duty in both cases. However, the difference is in how specifically your location data and other vehicle information is recorded during this time. Every vehicle event, both on duty and off, is recorded and displayed in an ELD. On the other hand, an AOBRD does not display this information except to say that you have changed your status to personal and the location of the vehicle. Moving on to yard moves. This is where those instances where one of your vehicles are parked in a yard and you are perhaps asked to move your vehicle. You need to move to accommodate other vehicles, other drivers. Another example may be when you're on someone's property, moving trailers, shunting vehicles, moving containers around in a shipping yard and off a public road. You just need to move a little bit and you aren't really driving on a public highway. Yard moves allow you to move your vehicle these short distances, and with the Big Road application, you can go up to 5 miles at a time with no maximum speed. You are able to use multiple instances of yard moves if you require it. This would be booked as on duty, not driving. On the other hand, when you're running as an ELD, you will need to be put into that duty status to be able to use this function. With an AOBRD, you're still able to use yard move without it affecting your drive time under the hours of service regulation. It will, however, affect your on-duty not drive maximum. So that would be another one of the bonuses of using AOBRD till December 2019. Next, we'll move on to the duty statuses. There are two scenarios I'm going to talk about. How much more restrictive the ELD is than the AOBRD is the way we deal with duty status changes. If you have not heard as of yet, an ELD is much more automated than an AOBRD. You translate that to mean that it is much less flexible. For example, with an ELD, according to the rulemaking, if a driver's vehicle has stopped moving for 5 consecutive minutes and the driver has not responded to the ELD prompt on the device within 60 seconds, their status will automatically change to on-duty not driving. With the AOBRD solution, they are not required to change the driver's duty status when the vehicle is no longer in motion. We'll move on to now location data. AOBRDs record a vehicle's location at the change of each duty status change. There is no specification on how accurate the location has to be, and it can be manually entered by the driver. With ELD, the location needs to be automatically recorded anytime there is a change in duty status. One other feature with ELD is that the location will be recorded every 60 minutes while driving, when the engine is turned on or off, and at the start and end of any yard move or personal conveyance move. The accuracy of an ELD must be within 1 mile while on duty driving for ELDs, or within 10 miles in personal conveyance mode. This is in order to protect the driver's privacy and as part of the anti-harassment language in the rulemaking. So it will be tracked to the nearest city, town, rather than the precise GPS location. Moving on now to editing with ELDs. As I'm sure you're coming to appreciate, it makes a lot more sense to continue with your AOBRD until mandated by December 16, 2019 than the ELD option right now. If you or your fleet is planning on transitioning to ELD now, however, there are some key differences you'll need to know. Remember, if you're installing a compliance solution from today onward, it must run as an ELD. As I mentioned previously, AOBRDs allow drive time to be edited when they are attributed to the wrong driver. Therefore, it offers drivers and fleets some flexibility as they get accustomed to the engine-connected logging. ELDs do not allow automatically recorded events like drive time to be edited. The only thing that can be done is that they be annotated. While all edits made on AOBRDs are recorded, they are not readily displayed to the DOT officers during inspection. Very, very key. ELDs not only record who makes an edit and when, but all edits require an annotation. ELDs will also keep a copy of the original unedited log and a copy of the edited annotated log. Plus, all edits will be visible to the DOT inspector, including both logs during roadside inspections. Let's now move on to event accountability in ELDs. A big difference you'll notice when you transition over to ELD is that all electronic logging devices call attention to what is called unidentified driving. As an example, even if you have a mechanic who fixes a part and then test drives the truck, it must be recorded and annotated. In such instances, the mechanic must be set up as an exempt driver on your account so that the drive time can be put in her exempt driving account. Otherwise, the next person who goes into the vehicle will be prompted to either accept or reject the unidentified driving time. The ELD will alert you about this unidentified driving time as soon as you sign in. This is done to ensure that all driver logs are accurate. I want to stress that an administrator in the back office can assign this driving time to a driver, but that the driver needs to either accept it by signing it off and adding it to its logs or rejecting it. The driver ultimately has the responsibility here. Another thing you'll see when you start using a device as an ELD is that if the truck has stopped moving 5 consecutive minutes, driver has not responded within 60 seconds, the driver is automatically put on duty, not driving. I now want to move on just to compare what the AOBRD daily log looks like with the ELD daily log. One of the biggest and most obvious differences will be how your daily logs will look when you use the AOBRD versus how it looks when you're using the ELD. If you're currently using an AOBRD, you'll be familiar with what your daily log looks like. Here's an example in front of us of the daily log with an AOBRD. This is what will be visible to the inspector at roadside. In the log header, you can see the driver, carrier, trailer, shipment information. Then there's the duty graph, followed by your duty status events, including your time, location, duration, and status. When you compare that with the ELD, you'll notice quite differently. It's the same logs, but it looks much differently under ELD. The same day in question. So the log header and the duty graph will look the same, but as you can see, there are greater detail, more events recorded and displayed. You can see under the duty graph that an ELD record and display not only your duty status changes, but also the ELD status, the commercial motor vehicle status, the duty status, any intermediate events, so every hour and time location that your vehicle is being operated. If they are present, the ELD will also show a list of diagnostic events and malfunctions as part of your daily log. This is why it's so important that if you have an unfortunate situation where the ELD malfunctions, that you are able to record that. As you can see, the detail of each event is greatly expanded. So under ELD, each event will include the time, type of event, vehicle location, odometer reading, engine hours, and event origin, whether it was automatically recorded or manually entered by the driver. We'll now move on to what are some of the ELD required in-cab materials. This is very, very important. Once you are running with an electronic logging device, ELD, there is specific material that the FMCSA requires you to have access to in your vehicle and be surrendered to the inspector upon request. To make this easy for you, we've created this ELD Resource Center at Fleet Complete. It's on our customer welcome portal webpage with all of these materials located. It's at www.welcometofleetcomplete.com. We'll move on to what is now an inspection guide. An inspection guide for your specific ELD. This guide gives you and the inspecting officer detailed instructions on how to complete an inspection using your ELD. When driving, you must have access to this document, either digitally or paper copy, and you must surrender it to the officer. It is important that your driver understand this ELD guide because the inspectors will be asking. This driver should be able to walk the inspector through how to email, fax, or print the logs for the officer, how to prepare the mobile app for an on-screen roadside inspection. If your driver doesn't know how to do that, there'll be problems at roadside. For the inspecting officer, this guide will provide a step-by-step direction on how he or she is supposed to perform an on-screen inspection using the Big Road mobile app. If your driver is pulled over for an inspection, this is what your drivers will have to show the officer. Show them this card and ask how they would like to see the logs. We'll move on to Our next document, which is also included, is the Malfunctions Guide. This guide will give your drivers instructions on what to do if the ELD isn't working properly. It includes a step-by-step list of what is needed in the event of a malfunction and how a driver is to record their logs during that time. I say it at every webinar that I host, please ensure that your drivers always have a backup blank log in addition to these guides. With Fleet Complete, the inspection and malfunction guides are on the same piece of paper or available electronically. This is called your ELD driver card. This way, it's easier for you and your drivers. You don't have to keep track of extra paperwork. You can merely download your driver card or request a laminated copy from the ELD Resource Center available at our homepage of the Fleet Complete's Customer Welcome Portal. Next is the ELD User Manual. This gives your drivers detailed instructions on how to use the ELD. If your driver or yourself, you need to know how to use the feature, you can refer to the User Manual for instructions. Our User Manual is available online through the Big Road mobile app, so you can access it from your truck. You are not required to have a printed copy in your truck, but it's not a bad idea. Having a print-up copy, it's a good backup in the event your driver can't locate the electronic manual. Next, we'll move on to paper logs. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If your ELD malfunctions and it isn't a quick fix, the FMCSA's failsafe will be to require you to have 8 days of blank logs. ELD is not mandated in Canada, but it's accepted in regulation. Therefore, if it malfunctions in Canada, you need blank logs for the day in question in your previous 14. If you don't have it, your drivers and/or yourself as a motor carrier can be charged. This way you can record your hours of service on paper if you need to, and you can still run in compliance while the malfunction is being addressed. After the ELD mandate of today, if there is a malfunction, the ELD vendor has a period of 8 days in which to correct that deficiency, and you will continue using paper logs. We'll move on now to additional resources. Fleet Complete has a lot of resources available to make sure you have everything you need to get up to speed. In addition to the ELD materials page, our ELD Resource Center also contains dozens of training videos, one-pager information sheets to help you navigate our compliance tools. We also host frequent training live sessions with an open Q&A for our customers to enable our customers to successfully run in compliance. There's a whole host of webinars. There's some YouTube videos that I've prepared on our Fleet Complete site if you want to see those. We host regular informal webinars on industry news and compliance topics. Once you have signed up with the Fleet Complete solution, we have a world-class in-house customer support team that is available 24/7 to assist you with any technical questions you may have. We also have great training and account management teams to make sure you have everything you need to manage your compliance. I'm going to move on now to the Fleet Complete's ELD solution. We've covered a lot of information during this webinar, and if you have already installed your AOBRD, it's up to you to decide when you want to transition your fleet to ELD. On the other hand, if you don't have a solution, you need to get going. It's plain and simple. It's time to choose a solution that meets your needs. With that being in mind, I wanted to stress the fact Big Road was recently named the #1 ELD provider in North America. Why is that? Well, it's the value we deliver to our customers. It doesn't matter which fleet size you've got. So before we dive into some questions, I want to talk briefly into some Fleet Complete solutions powered by the Big Road as part of the ELD mandate. We have our HOS mobile app powered by Big Road. It is our electronic logbook and hours of service management application. This was the first product that Big Road offered to the market. It was actually one of, if not the first, electronic logbooks ever available. The Big Road mobile app is used to replace paper logs. Next, the desktop platform. If you or your drivers are already using the HOS mobile app powered by Big Road, we should suggest that you give our desktop platform a try. It's our real-time operations management tool that helps administrators better manage their operations while getting on the road to ELD compliance. From the Fleet Complete desktop platform, you'll be able to see where all your assets are on a map, monitor hours of service simply and within compliance. You can easily see when you or your drivers is at risk for a violation, and you can communicate in real time with messages. You can also use this web app to store all of your logs and documents to have them readily available in case of an audit. Both the HOS mobile app and our desktop platform connects with our vehicle electronic logging device. Next, the in-vehicle ELD. This is a solution that everyone should get onto if they still need a compliance solution. It is our MGS 700 or DashLink ELD. You simply plug the device into the ECM of the truck, pair it with your Big Road mobile app via Bluetooth, and you're ready to go. No expensive installation or any permanent changes to your trucks required. The device will pull the information directly from the computer within your truck, so you can focus on driving and not logging. As we covered, if you already have a device in place, you can run it as an AOBRD until December 16, 2019. If before that you want to do a full ELD switch, it's as easy as a flick of a switch. You control when you want to transition from AOBRD to ELD. Remember though, the deadline is December 16, 2019. That wraps up our transitioning from the AOBRD to ELDs webinar. Now, if you wish, you can put in your questions and I'll attempt to answer some of them. And if I don't get to all of them today, please, you can send your comments, questions to mark.moncion@fleetcomplete.com. You will also be prompted to complete a survey of what you liked and what we can do differently and any other suggested topics going forward. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, I'm starting to see some questions coming in. First one, can a driver use a portable electronic logging device? The answer to that is yes. A driver may use a portable ELD. A portable ELD must be mounted in a fixed position during commercial motor vehicle operation and be visible to the driver from a normal seating position. It's important to note that if stopped at roadside, an inspector will not go into the cab of your tractor to see your device. So hopefully you are not with a vendor where the device is tethered to the truck, because if that's the case, the officer is going to ask that you either print the logs or that you have paper logs made readily available. Another question, how long must a motor carrier retain the logs, the ELD records? Well, that has not changed. It's still the 6-month period. We have one about FMCSA and what type of data will they retain. Well, they won't retain any ELD data, of course. The only caveat is that they want to use that information as part of a violation that they want to proceed in court. Next question. If the vehicle registration for a commercial motor vehicle reflects a model year of 2000 or newer, but the vehicle was manufactured without an ECM or an engine control module, is the carrier required to comply with the ELD rule? The answer to that question is yes. Motor carrier operating a vehicle with a manufactured year of 2000 and newer without an ECM is subject to the ELD rule. There are questions about exemptions. As is the case with any rule, there's always exemptions. So the first one, Drivers that use time cards currently will not be required to use time cards in the future. Drivers who use paper logs for not more than 8 days out of every 30-day period, and that's not a calendar month. So if it's between the 15th of March and the 15th of April, that would be a rolling 30 days. Drivers of vehicles manufactured before the year 2000. Drivers of vehicles manufactured before the year 2000 will be exempt. Drivers who operate drive-away, tow-away configurations where the vehicle driven is actually the cargo are also exempt. Got a question about jurisdiction, specifically Canadian and Mexican domiciled drivers who operate in the United States must comply with the United States rules, and more specifically ELD rules when operating in the United States. Canada is going to be moving forward with a Canadian version of ELD, so stay tuned for that. And as I get more information, I'll be posting that on our Fleet Complete website. So here's another one. If a motor carrier installs and requires a driver to use an AOBRD before December 18th, which is before today, they may continue until December 16th, 2019. Does this mean I can move an AOBRD from one vehicle to another after December 18th, 2017? The answer to that, and we got direction from FMCSA, if the motor carrier uses an AOBRD before the 18th of December and they replace vehicles in their fleet, they can install the AOBRD that was used in the previous vehicle. What they cannot do is purchase and install a new AOBRD in a new vehicle that results in the fleet size growing. I had another question that is kind of similar to that. If you have a situation where a motor carrier purchases automatic onboard devices in bulk quantities and installs after December 18th, 2017, that will not be allowed. In order for an AOBRD to be grandfathered, it must be installed in a commercial motor vehicle before December 18th. If a grandfathered AOBRD suddenly becomes inoperable, so in other words, can no longer be used, then that AOBRD must be replaced by an ELD. I had one about owner-operators. If a motor carrier adds an owner-operator to its fleet after December 18th, and the owner-operator operates with a grandfathered AOBRD, can the owner-operator continue to use its grandfathered AOBRD while employed by the new motor carrier? Again, direction from FMCSA is yes. An owner-operator that operates grandfathered prior to December 18th may continue to operate with the grandfathering provisions. Those are great questions, folks. I have one about who is responsible for the integrity of the records of duty status in terms of editing and certifying drivers and motor carriers. Well, again, that hasn't changed in our new world. It has no effect on the rulemaking. So essentially, drivers and motor carriers equally share responsibility for time and the accuracy, of course. We have one about unassigned driving time. How does that work? Well, what's going to happen is a new driver, when he logs into a device, will be given a prompt about unassigned driving time. So if the wheels are turning, the time has to go to somebody. If the unassigned time doesn't belong to the driver has to indicate that in his ELD log. If the drive time logged under this unassigned time does belong to this driver, then he accepts it. Otherwise, he rejects it, and it's to the back office to assign that time, redeploy it to the right driver. All right, folks, so pretty well winds it down for today. I wanted to thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to join me on this webinar. I hope that you found it of use. Again, I've got my email address there. If there's something you're thinking about, you'd like to ask me, do not hesitate. mark.monsian@fleetcomplete.com. Have a safe and productive day. Bye now.